Welcome to the Texas Panhandle Builders Association TPBA Builder Talk podcast, where we'll bring you expert advice from the heart of Amarillo building community. Whether you're a seasoned professional or just starting in the trade, our goal is to keep you informed on the ever-evolving building codes, share best practices, and help you excel in your craft. From innovative design ideas to smart material selections and everything in between, we're here to support you in every aspect of home building. Each episode, we'll dive into the topics that matter most to builders, contractors, and industry professionals, ensuring that you stay ahead of the curve in this rapidly changing landscape. Our discussions are shaped by the experiences and knowledges of our hosts and guests, providing you with valuable perspectives that you can apply directly to your work. The views and the opinions expressed are those of the host and the guest and may not always reflect the most up-to-date or accurate information. Let's build something great together, one conversation at a time.
Oh boy.
Welcome back to the second episode of the TPBA Builder Talk podcast. We're excited to be back, and that's right, we've got a second episode ready for you. Last episode, we talked about the performance versus the prescriptive path on meeting code compliance for new construction here in the city of Amarillo. So if you haven't watched it, go back, take a look at it. Give us a thumbs up, a like, subscribe. Comment on the channel. Let us know if you got any questions. This week we've kind of got a series of topics lined out, and what we're going to do is we're going to walk you guys through the series of construction, starting with the foundation. So, with foundation being the first thing, that's our topic for today. So, guys, let's dive into it. The first thing we kind of want to talk about is the dirt pad. That's
Right, you can't build a foundation.
Can't build it without it. That's right. So the common foundation here is slab on grade. That's probably 99% of what we're going to see right now. Doesn't mean it couldn't change in the future, but that's what's been going on for a long time, and I suspect it will continue to go on for a while. But the first thing we've got to do that is the dirt pad. So, Robert, you want to start us off as far as the dirt? What kind of some of the guidelines we've got?
Well, before you start out, something to think about is picking a good lot.
It's true.
The dirt is the dirt, but a previous build that we were into last year, at the last minute, I jumped over one lot for a lot of different reasons. So pick good dirt, and then we can talk about the dirt itself. But when you're picking a lot, there's things when you have 6 or 8 or 10 to choose from, same price range. Why do you pick a certain lot over another lot?
That's a good point.
Well, you pick a lot, and you have the lots that you're going to build on eventually. What makes you pick that one? There's views, there's people next door, there's sides, there's setbacks.
Yeah,
you got to pick a good lot.
So that's something to think about. Is usually you kind of want to. I guess if you're building a speculative house, you want to know what size house you want to build, and you want to make sure that your house is going to fit on that lot and
fitment's good.
Meet the setbacks that you're going to be required by that developer or the city code or whatever might be the case. If you're wanting to do a specific landscape, front or back, pool, whatever, those all need to fit.
Sure.
So that's kind of one of the starting grounds on picking a lot. Of course, location's probably the very first part of that.
Corner lots cost more to build on.
Yeah.
So not necessarily corner lot if you're looking at lots. Drainage. Are you sitting in the middle of 3 lots where everybody's draining to you? Are you going to drain to the next guy's lot, or do you have a ditch there that you can drain into and not have to pay to drain to the next guy's lot? There's choices of that. Is the grade that the developer left you with bad haircut? And the next 2 lots over are more worthy of your energies and efforts. You're going to say, it's not going to cost you more. That's interesting. If you take your dirt guy, we'll talk about dirt in a second, and you go to 3 lots in a row, there could be $5,000 to $8,000 difference between 3 lots right next door to each other. So be very careful. And first and foremost, picking your dirt. Yep.
That's true. With another part of that is back to the design of the house and what you're planning on doing with it. Maybe you plan on putting a basement in there, and you might want to run some tests to see what you're going to be running into to see if you can even excavate in that area.
Right. Yeah, it could be solid rock and you don't even know it.
That could be even bigger than $5,000 or $10,000.
Sure.
So
I went out to this one lot with my fence post and my hammer. Ka-ting, ka-ting. I mean, I seriously could not drive a stake into that corner. It wasn't going to happen.
And it's one of those with the way our shelves run here. It could be from one lot to the next.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So you're going to spend a lot of money from one lot to the next. So just pay attention to picking your lot.
Yeah,
first.
What seems like the good deal might not always be the good deal. There's probably a reason it's less money or it's more expensive.
Right.
Well, and out here, so much of it's old ag land, so it's been driven over by tractors, plowed up for decades.
Yeah.
It gets compacted. I can definitely guarantee you
But
that.
this rock shelf thing is pretty weird.
Mm-hmm.
And nowhere you just got the rock shelf.
Yeah.
It's maybe in just a third of the lot.
Yep.
And next thing you know, that we'll talk about this later as the progression of the build goes. But you get your trencher guy in there, and he can't trench it. He's a special trencher. Diamond blades and whatever else. So know your lot before you just pick it, or with you're working with a customer, with a homeowner. Figure it out. Do some due diligence. Don't just say, "I'll take that one."
Yep. So moving on from selecting the location of the lot, I guess typically the next thing that would happen here it would be the infill and the pad build, right? Before we do any kind of excavation or any forming for any kind of foundation, you're bringing that up so that you can meet minimum requirements. So that's something we talked about pre-show, kind of the finished floor level to curb or street or what we're required for right now. And we mentioned that now has to be turned into the city of Amarillo in sea level.
Right.
So we got to add 3,600 feet plus whatever it is to your zero. And then if you've got the minimum 18-inch requirement from your top of curb to the finished floor, that needs to be expressed in sea level numbers. So that's kind of something to pay attention to now.
I learned something today. Thank you, Jordan. That my iPhone, my iWatch has sea level on it.
It does.
Yeah, it's got a compass app, and at the bottom of the compass app is sea level, and it moves.
And if you move,
it's
it needs to be accurate.
Yeah, and so that was I learned something today already.
I wouldn't trust my parachute on it, but
exactly.
It might work for a foundation.
It probably gets you close enough.
So, that's something else we were kind of talking about pre-show. At minimum on a flat lot, we're probably looking at bringing in 14 inches of dirt so we can reach that with, call it a 5-inch sand cushion and a 5-inch slab. We're going to be really close to hitting that 18 inches of fall to the curb from the finished floor at that point. I think a lot of the builders around here are as flat as we are and as typical as everything is. That's going to be the common thing that we see. Before we get to where that pad's finished and how we got there, we still need to get into the compaction of the dirt, the tests that we need to run, the way that dirt needs to be brought in. So when you guys want to jump in on kind of the steps to building that pad?
You're a pretty dirty guy. Why don't you go?
I'm not that well. We don't look at that. When I was at the city, we did not. We as inspectors did not see that. It was attached to your file, but as far as going out there and seeing what the compaction test was or the plasticity index, we as inspectors didn't see it.
Sure.
So one of the things I know that I think they've gotten a little stricter on is through the Panhandle Residential Foundation Manual 2017, which is the minimum standard. You've got to turn in now a PI test with it, your plasticity index, and then there are 2 charts that chart A is from 15 to 20 plasticity index, and then the other one is from 21 to 25. And then it has a square foot to it. It can tell you up to however many square feet
You got
under
that right.
roof.
You got that right.
You got it right.
Yeah, I just happened to be looking at this today. It's 15 to 20. The chart A and chart B is 21 to 25. So,
Yep.
So what is plasticity?
So and correct me if I'm wrong.
What's a fancy word?
This
What's
is-
plasticity?
From what I understand, it is the allowable movement that is in that dirt pad. And the higher the number, the more movement you've got, which
Correct.
means the
More clay, higher clay content.
And what would be required of that is a larger reinforcement metal.
Yeah, so this other chart has a bigger footing.
Yes.
It's a 30 or 36 inch footing, while this other chart here is a 24-inch footing.
It can change your shovel beam sizes. It can
Yeah.
change your
Rebar
rebar
schedule.
sizes, your depths
Yeah.
of your footing, your widths of
So
your
you're saying
footing.
the bigger the number, the more the dirt's going to move. So
Right.
they want bigger footings and more bars so that it doesn't move the house.
That's correct.
Plasticity.
Plasticity.
Plasticity. Okay, got it. All right, keep going.
By the way, that is in the code book.
It is.
Yeah.
And it's
So
it's
anyway,
new.
yeah, it's been there a while, but I think the other part is those charts are based total under roof, which is something he's had a hard time with, is things being total under roof.
Yeah.
So once you hit that 5,000 square feet under roof, now it's got to be engineered
Correct.
anyway.
We're talking covered porches.
Yep.
Anything that's
Yep.
under roof. And that's one thing I wasn't quite used to. Even the pricing comes in under roof. You know,
Sometimes.
Yeah.
yeah, and a lot of
It
times you would
does.
think the pricing would be the heated space, but no, it's under roof.
Yeah. Framing's typical
Yeah.
under roof.
Right, right.
Yeah, a lot of it can be under roof, and there's so much of it that it just takes being around it and in this area to know, because some of it is heat and cooled, some of it's under roof, some of it's living only.
Porch around.
Yeah, some of it's exactly right.
So this one here is 30, I don't know, is it 32, 3,300 square foot house,
Living.
3362, but it's 5,000 under roof.
Mhm.
So it had to be engineered. The
Correct.
actual foundation had to be sent out to an engineer to verify the shovel beams, and probably the plasticity was part of the mix.
Yeah.
And his figuring and his rebars, who knows what. But yeah, 5,000 square feet's the number for the city.
Or
Or
if it's over 2 stories.
it's over 2 stories.
Yeah. So that's the other one to keep in mind.
Well, that's interesting, because how many times do you see a story and a half around here? Most of the time, they're not 2-story houses. You know, they're sort of bonusy.
There's 2. There's never hardly 3.
Right. 3-story, we don't.
No.
We don't
What I'm
see.
saying is that, like that house, that Pinnacle house, it's a full 2-story house.
Mhm.
The one over there. But a lot of houses I see,
It's a partial
it's a
second.
partial. It's a story and a half of sorts. Now, you consider that a 2-story?
Yes, we would consider that.
You
a
still
two-story. So
consider it a two-
it's as long as
You got stairs.
you've got a second floor.
Right.
Once you get over a second floor to a third floor, that's when we're being required for engineering.
Yeah.
And a licensed architect, by the way.
Mhm.
Not just a draftsman anymore at that point.
Sure.
So those are some of the things to look out for on the dirt side of it. Now we're also doing compaction tests. We're
Yep.
doing moisture tests. Those need to be done at your kind of your base layer and then your top layer.
Mhm.
Your top 10 inches. Is that correct?
I think that's right.
I think it's common that a lot of them will test the top foot just because that's what they do, but the top 10 inches is what's required. At 95% compaction, plus or minus 2 on the moisture.
Yeah.
Do you know the moisture content
97.5, I thought.
on the moisture content?
I think that's right. It says it in the PRFM.
We might have to get back on the moisture content.
Yeah, we may have to do that.
For some reason, I was thinking we were much lower than that, but I do know the compaction is 95 to be certain.
Yeah.
And then it's interesting on the compaction, it isn't the entire lot, or the
No.
entire building pad.
Right.
So they pick a spot and they compact it, and then they go back in the truck and they drive away.
And I don't know that this is something that I'm unaware of, is how many they require and what locations. For what I understand, I think it's 1.
Yeah.
And it just happens to be that as far as the guy walked out of his truck, and that's where he stopped walking, and he parked the thing in the ground, and now it's a compaction test.
I'm looking at moisture content.
Okay.
So you guys kind of carry on.
Sure.
outside of those tests, then we're moving into the excavation, the footings, depending on what type of slab. Joel, you want to talk about the types of foundations that we could come across, some that you've built?
Well, slab on grade is where you guys are all comfortable, and it seems to be the normal program here. I've done a lot of experience in a pier, what you guys call pier and beams, they call post and beam, pier and beam, but a spread foundation and a stem wall.
Yeah.
And whether you put your floor system on top of the stem wall or whether you drop it inside of your crawl space, I think the code requires like 18 inches of crawl space from the bottom of the beam to a crawl space. But I've done a lot of crawl space pier and beam type of homes. I'm doing one in Delhart now, which was 3 separate pods of crawl space in one big basement, and it was all out of ICF forms.
Man, the best part about that, you could get down there on that creeper and go anywhere you wanted to go in a hurry to get. If you had a plumbing leak, you could fix it in a matter of a second
without having to tear out the middle of your kitchen
floor.
floor.
No, not at all.
And I bring a lot of experience to hillside building and a large retaining wall. But what people had told me was that the crawl space, you're going to have snakes. Snakes are going to come up from the ground and varmints and everything else. And so I poured, what I had done in the past is I poured a rat slab.
Right.
And so down inside this crawl space is concrete.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what Robert was saying about the creeper. Yeah, you seriously can roll around all inside there.
Are there any disadvantages to doing a stem wall or a pier beam, post and beam versus doing the slab on grade?
Well, I think if you have, and you guys can speak more about the dirt and the local dirt. I had the dirt engineered, and I did a giant footing, and I feel pretty good about it not moving. So that would be the only disadvantage that I could see is the movement. Okay, I have tenfold advantages. I mean, it's so many advantages to me to bring your house up out of the ground. Where you got height, you have steps coming out of your garage, you have steps coming out of your front of your house, you have access to your plumbing. Mm-hmm. It's a wood floor, it doesn't bum out your knees, you're not walking on concrete. I could go on forever, reasons why to do it. You guys come up with any disadvantages? Why I wouldn't want to do what you guys call pier and beam?
The common misconception, because of the way houses used to be framed, as far as the flooring system, when we were using particularly piers and beams and solid sawn lumber, those floors could tend to be bouncy. Mm-hmm. With the way we've got engineered woods and wood products and design specifications now, I would say that you could walk on a well-built stem wall, pier and beam house and not be able to feel the difference. So that was the common misconception of why people around here didn't want, because we used to build a lot of them.
We did.
That's
built
what I
a
understand.
ton of
Back in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, almost every one of them was that way.
even back further than that, because I lived in one that was built during
Well,
1927. So,
The rest of us aren't that old, Robert.
well, so no, just Joel.
Were you the original owner?
No, I wasn't the original
Oh,
owner.
okay, just checking.
No.
But the floor system, that if you have a 2-story house and you're walking upstairs in your 2-story house, it's the same exact floor system
Right.
that's built on the pier and beam. And you don't need to do all these posts. Like, it's a misconception that you're doing posts.
Right.
You can. These houses are not that
Look at the
big.
clear span.
They're clear span, and just the way you design the foundation, you can clear span with an open web truss and in a solid wood floor. It's an excellent floor.
And I might have missed on some of your pros on there, but you have access to all your plumbing. You can run electrical under there. You have the capability to have underfloor insulation.
Yes.
A huge heat soak in the wintertime is our slab floor. And a lot of people don't realize that. I don't know the number, but it's like 40% of the heat that you're pumping into that house is finding its way out through that cold concrete in the winter, where we've got a common 45-degree ground temperature. and heat moves from hot to cold, so it's going straight through that
And,
slab.
and we don't insulate these slabs.
No,
No.
it's
No.
not required.
Yeah.
No, well, it's, and the reason, as a matter of fact, you got a letter from the.
Oh, right, the termite.
Mhm.
Yeah,
for the
free
termite.
card.
Yeah,
That's
Right.
kind of how it
But
didn't come about.
I mean, aside from what is required, it's not that easy to insulate a slab. You know, it's costly.
it is.
I mean, it's easy
It's
to do,
easy. It's
but
just
it's costly.
Yeah.
You
No,
know,
it's the same on the pier and beam, but now you also don't have the concrete to pay for, and that becomes an offset with an added benefit.
Right. Right.
And there are ways of building a vented crawl space, and there's ways of building a
Conditioned crawl space.
sealed and conditioned, which
Right.
I'm a big fan of.
right. The one we did down there is a sealed conditioned crawl
Mhm.
space.
It makes remodel work in the future a whole lot easier. I know, the average homeowner is like 7 years. With interest rates the way they are now, I
Could be
suspect
longer
those
than
are gonna
that.
Be a lot longer.
Mhm.
So that's something to think about if you are building a house. Maybe that's something you want to stay in for a long time, and being able to move a bathroom around to once was formal dining room. You can easily do that with the crawl space.
Well, the thing that got my attention of what's in town here, there's companies in town they're making a good income. Their specialty is fixing slab-on grades.
Mhm.
You know, or there's another group that's in there. I don't know how the heck they do it, but they tunnel new plumbing under there.
Mhm.
I mean, literally, they're sewer rats.
Mhm.
You know,
It's much more difficult, and I've done it. It's much more difficult than just being a
it
sewer.
sounds difficult.
It is.
And so you know, to me, if you have numerous companies that are making a good living
Mhm.
fixing this building practice, why?
Why are we still doing it?
Well, yeah, I mean, why are we practicing that
It's
thing?
I think a lot of it is we tend to follow common practice longer than we should because it's
Mhm.
not questioned. It's not how can we do it better? How can we improve the system?
That is a truth.
And that's the way we should look at building here in Emerald. I feel like if you get complacent, then you're not doing your job anymore. You're not doing anybody favors. We're always coming out with new technology, new products, new design ideas. And yeah, you don't have to be the first one to jump on it, but a stem wall foundation is not
new.
It's been
No.
tested for a long time,
Mhm.
and I mean, obviously, we're kind of advocates of it because what the potential cost savings it can bring to you, the comfort it can bring to you, the remodelability that it can bring to you. There's more pros than there are cons to it.
I think
It's
so.
just not typical, and so maybe that's something that might change.
Yeah, I was told several years ago when I asked the question, why do we not build the pier and beam system anymore? And I was told it's because the MEPs charge more money to do it. So I don't know if that was true or not, but I was given that as the premise for not doing it. And so that's all I knew. And that's what I was told. So, and that came from more than one building.
Coming from a plumbing background, if you told me I had to plumb in a house that was on a pier and beam versus a house that was on slab, I would pick the pier and beam 100% of the time.
Mhm.
Because if I'm doing one on slab and I miss the toilet by 4 inches,
Yep.
I can no longer use an offset. I'm busting concrete, or they're living with a toilet that's off centered. If I do that under the slab, it's as simple as moving it in the dirt, or putting an offset under the house, or whatever that situation is. It's a whole lot easier, and that goes for any of it. Now, when I build slab on grade, almost everything I'm running overhead minus the sewer.
Right.
You could still do that. That doesn't change your electrical. It doesn't have to change your HVAC. You have an opportunity now, but it doesn't have to. So I feel like it might have been an excuse.
Well, I didn't say one way or another. I
Sure.
just said, okay, left it, dropped it,
yeah,
and that's what was given.
And
So
we are where we are.
Yeah.
And it's slab on
Yeah.
grade.
For a while. For a little while. The thing that I look at, since I'm an old guy with new fresh eyes in a new territory,
Sure.
right? So and we briefly were touching on the dirt and how we're compacting and we're moisture testing. And we have this beautiful pad like this table here. You know, you don't really want to disturb that beautiful dirt because it's ready to pour concrete on. So what do we do next?
We stick a ditcher in it.
We make it. We turn it into Swiss cheese.
That's
Yeah.
exactly right. With the plumbing and the footings
and everything else. And so when it's all put back together, then
And there's-
your compacting and your moisture guy, they're long gone.
there's no more compaction tests
No,
for your
the-
backfill.
Yeah, they're gone. And so you're counting on the concrete guy with his
Right.
plate compactor
Your
and some
use.
sand and some rebar and
Or your plumber or your electrician that caused their ditch to be
right.
filled back in properly and lifted and compacted.
And when they put the plumbing in there, they don't put it on a bed of sand. You know, so
Or-
they're packing in
How
there.
often do you see that plumbing where it's right at the crust of that pad?
Yeah.
So how do you compact over that?
Right, you don't because it's right there at the bottom of the pad. So you know so I don't know, that whole compaction thing is really cool up front, but at the time when you're actually going to pour, when you're really counting on that to be, you know, you can't count on it.
It's what I like to say. It's a really good idea, just not worth a crap. Yeah. So
Well, yeah, something else on the compaction. I did. I asked the gentleman that does our compaction and stuff, and I said, so in a schedule point of view, you go out there, you're going to get this pad. It's all beautiful, and how much time do I have now that you give me the moisture and the compaction before I need to get my next trade partner on and start doing the work before that pad gets stale? And there is a date. You know, expiration date
expiration date.
of that pad that's in there, and it's maybe 30 days out. So get on it, or if it's real hot and it dries out, and then it's not even worth 30 days.
interesting way to put this is, do you know what the relative humidity of dirt is?
No,
100%. Every dirt everywhere in the world.
100%.
100%.
Huh.
That is a scientific fact. So therefore, your crust, yes, can get dry and crack. I feel as if because you've got that relative humidity that doesn't change, now it's relative to the dirt. That's a hard concept to understand. Doesn't mean that the humidity is not changing. It's the relative humidity due to the dirt, the temperature of that dirt, and what it can hold. It's always 100% at the time.
On the surface, or all, or
The undersurface.
undersurface, right?
So your surface can dry, but I don't think it's really, I don't know how that's really jeopardizing the strength of that pad. Anyways, so random topic, random thing, random fact.
Random.
Little nugget.
It's a stale pad, you know.
Yeah. So
Don't drink your milk, get past the date.
we've got our dirt situation.
Pretty much, yeah.
It's covered up.
It's covered up.
So
Dirty subject.
moving into either way we go about this, we're installing footings, right? Unless
Correct.
we're doing something really bizarre like a wood foundation, which
Yeah.
Nobody.
never seen one around here.
You
Just
see them in the book.
Yeah,
You know,
heard
they have
about
a whole section of it.
That's right.
I don't get it. Maybe manufactured homes sitting up on pads, you can do a wood foundation skirt thing, but that's different.
It's still different than a permanent
Yeah,
wood foundation.
Yeah, I've never seen one.
I've read about them. I've seen pictures of them.
Yeah.
It's interesting. They last apparently. It's kind of mind-boggling that works, but it does, and it is a proven method of the code. Here we're going to put a footing in, and we're going to put a typical footing in. We don't have a lot of spread footings.
Nope.
We don't do a lot of. We don't go outside the norm of a 1 foot wide, 2 foot deep footing here. That's typical. And the rebar might change depending on the plasticity, the size of the house, the layout of the house, the design of it. But there's really not even a large variance in that.
No. It's either number 4 or number 5. That's pretty much what we do.
And so why is there not a spread footing? I mean, it's just
I've
like
done
a
them.
keel off the bottom of a boat. You know, it's a
Yeah.
straight kind of deal. You know,
I've built on stem walls before that have had them for backfilling up against that stem wall and supplying an extra lateral support. But, you know, I know in Colorado they do them because it's rock everywhere. They can't dig down deep, so they do the spread footing. It's just, again, one of those things that's not a common practice here.
Right.
You think if spread footing would float? You think it would move? I mean, if it's
I
not
think
down
it's-
30, if it's not down 30 inches, then it's not good here.
Why do you say that? Because of the frost line?
No, I don't know. It's because
Or-
of this.
Our frost line is 18 inches here.
Our frost line's 18 inches, but
Yeah.
spread footings start to negate that, just
Yeah.
like they get away with it in Colorado.
So it's not.
I don't know.
an issue.
I don't know why we don't do more of them. I think it's because we follow typical.
And we have trenchers.
And we
Yeah.
have trench-
And
and we have-
we don't do them with a hoe.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean that's the one thing I noticed is that there's no excavators. I mean, just digging in and doing footings.
Mhm.
You know, they're the trencher guys are like, oh.
Some of the guys have
We use
they're mini X's or
Mhm.
something like that, and I still see them dug that way
Mhm.
occasionally out in the county, but
I prefer digging them that way. I feel like it's easier to get a straight line than it is.
with a ditcher,
Mhm.
depends on who's running the ditcher too.
It's true.
So they're running a mini excavator with a 12-inch bucket.
Yes.
Yep.
What would be the problem if you asked them to run a 2-foot bucket?
Not a problem.
Nope.
In fact, that's how we did our spread footer, was a 3-foot bucket.
Yeah.
It's just not typical.
Well, it costs a lot more concrete doing it that way because you still have to go down 30 inches or 20, depending on which chart you're in. You still got to go down. So if you're going to go with the 3-foot bucket, you're going to make
The depth
you're going
does
to cost
change.
more yards.
The depth does change.
So that you don't go down as deep if you're going
The
wide.
spread footer. That's correct.
So it's a different engineering you have to come up with.
Yes,
That's correct. Yeah, and it might be. These are random numbers; they're not accurate numbers. But if you're 1 foot wide going 2 foot deep, and you're doing a spread footer that's 3 foot wide, you might only be going down 12 inches.
That's not low enough for the frost.
It has to do with the width of it.
right.
It doesn't necessarily have to do with the depth. And that's
But I will tell you, the city will insist that you be
Below
at
the frost.
8 below
Yeah.
the
I
frost.
could see that.
Yeah.
I could see that. And I don't know that we have. Do we have
I think
spread
it's a good
footers in
idea.
the panel foundation? I don't think we do.
We don't. It's all ditched.
I think it could be.
No, I think there's a couple. I think that one on page 13 is it has a spread footing. I can look it up, but I thought I saw one.
I don't know. We don't. We still ditch
Why?
basement walls.
Well,
We don't,
Yeah.
and then dig them out. I don't think that's the best way to do a basement.
So
That's for sure.
there's not a lot to review on the footings that's changed or that is unfamiliar. And so the next portion is from our typicals. We're forming up the slab. We're usually pouring the footings, doing mechanicals based on those footings, and the forms that we have set up so that you can pull your measurements from the outside wall and put your plumbing in under slab electrical if you've got it. Water lines.
If you got a code, you have to have it.
If you got it on islands, you do.
I mean, as far as like the floor plugs. I mean, if it's so many feet from here to there,
Those could be ran overhead.
yeah,
Those can be ran overhead.
floor plug. That's a good trick.
A floor plug. Sorry. No, you're right.
If you're staying on your
You're
head,
right. And the other thing you think about, talking electrical, is the Uford ground.
right?
Time that ground bar into the
The 20 foot, is that what they require?
the rebar of the slab itself.
So 2 seconds or less. What's a U for ground? Tell the people why we do that versus running 2 6-foot ground rods outside.
You can run 2 6-foot ground rods outside.
It's a backup ground rod, basically.
Yeah.
And the way we used to get away with it was copper plumbing, and they grounded to the copper plumbing.
Right.
And that's all gone.
That's all gone. Well, for the most part, the copper's gone, so therefore that grounding method is gone.
And unfortunately, XL does demand that you run a ground rod for their meters.
So you're putting a ground rod in anyway.
You're putting a ground rod in anyway.
Well, it doesn't cost you anything to do a U for. I mean, the guy's going to bar in there anyway, so
Right.
who cares?
Correct.
Yeah.
Just the forethought of making sure you've got it. That's all. And that's
And you want to put it somewhere close to your piano.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, you're buying Bear number 6 running
Long
overhead
ways.
and a long ways, and it's not cheap. So
No.
if you are, you're thinking about that, and you know where your panel's going to be, get you for on
As
that side,
close
on
as
that
you
side of
can.
the world.
Mhm. Mhm.
And that kind of it takes a little communication between Excel and the builder to go, okay, which side of this house are we going to put this on?
Sure.
Yeah, when we get to the electrical section of this, down the line, we'll have a discussion about that.
Yeah.
About Excel and their user friendliness and where they want their meters and things like that.
So let's move into the slab. Let's talk about sand cushion, the thickness of it, the thickness of the slab, the PSI of the slab, and the order that should go in and what it should look like.
Now you're going to have 5 inches of sand minimum, and you're going to have 5 inches of slab, except in the, if you look in the very fine print, it says 1800 square foot or less. They found no difference at 4 inches, and that's in the fine print
At 3,000 PSI.
at 3,000
That's the
psi.
key.
Yep.
So those are the minimums, right? 4-inch slab, 1,800 square foot or less. You're going over that. You're looking at 5-inch slab, 3,000 PSI.
Yes.
5-inch sand fill, always.
Period.
Typical. And
I
then
don't always see that.
I could see that. I could see that. And shovel beams, right? So that's what we refer to them around here, grade beams.
Because they put them in with a shovel.
Because they put them in with the shovel,
They hand shovel them.
and that pretty sand that they just leveled out and compacted,
It's all gone now.
it's now being dug up again.
Yeah.
Yep.
So more Swiss cheese.
Yeah.
More Swiss cheese.
And then we don't require a vapor barrier.
No.
around here.
Are there any jurisdictions that do require vapor?
Oh, in the Dallas-Fort Worth area
Austin,
is very
San Antonio, Houston.
Austin. Everybody, but typically us.
Once you get to Dallas and South,
Yeah.
I got you.
and it might be something that we move to, I would assume, but as of right now, we don't. So no slab insulation or no vapor barrier.
So earlier we were talking, are there any downfalls with the vapor barrier? Does it cause potential issues?
Concrete guys typically don't like it. And I think part of it's because it's more work. It's thick plastic. It's not the easiest thing to roll out. And
Probably when it's so windy here, it'd be a little drag.
that's
for
true.
sure.
It can be.
It's 6 mil black and you get a big 20 by 100.
Mm-hmm. Parachute.
Yeah, it wouldn't be very easy to put down at all.
It's got a lot of really good benefits. It's also an added cost.
Yeah.
And the benefits aren't talked about enough that anybody's willing to spend a few $1,000s to do it the way it should be done. But some of the benefits are a lot of those plastics are rated for I guess lack of better terms, gas penetrations, right? So they'll block out radon, or if you build next to a landfill, something that's putting out any kind of toxic gas or chemical through the soil, they are rated to block that.
And there's also one that is rated for termite control.
There is.
Yep.
The other thing that it can do, since we're talking about slab on grade, is when we're pouring that concrete straight to the sand, that sand is absorbing a good portion of that moisture downward.
Boy, in the summertime, it just
So it
sucks it.
cure's different.
Yeah.
So it cure's different.
A
And
lot
if you've got a
different.
vapor slab, then all of your moisture is curing out. So in turn, it allows that slab to cure a lot slower, which forms a harder concrete.
Mm-hmm.
But depending on your build cycle, if you have a lot of moisture content in your concrete, you can't put your flooring down. I mean, you end up with issues with putting flooring down when it's too wet. No one checks that.
If you've got a pretty quick build cycle,
Yeah.
you know,
I mean, in production, these guys would all of a sudden, that slab's done in 3 weeks, 8 weeks later, they're putting the inexpensive,
That's true.
and then you have a problem.
That's true. That's true.
And that's because of the vapor barrier didn't allow the moisture to go down. It whipped up.
On the backside of that is people who aren't putting them under their flooring. You have one under your concrete, and it will solve that issue. You don't need one again. It would be redundant. So, say somebody has put down a tile with a water-based thin set that's not going to react with moisture, and so they didn't need a vapor barrier of any sort. That tile in 15 years gets taken up, and then somebody goes down with a engineered hardwood. They didn't put a vapor barrier down. That engineered hardwood's not gonna last.
Right.
If there was an underslab vapor barrier there, they would still be in the safe, all because somebody thought about it when they were building that house.
And you can't always, I was in the floor covering business, and I remember when the polyurethane blues came out, and those things absolutely,
Hated vapor.
it saved it saved some wood floors, but at the same time, that's one of the pros that I like about a vapor barrier under a slab is, I think that polyurethane glue somewhere down the road is going to break down before a 10 mil or 15 mil plastic will.
Something else nobody's talking about is what's that polyurethane doing for your health inside the house?
That's exactly right. Even if it says low VOC on it.
Low VOC is
Does not say zero.
Let's say no VOC. And that's something we'll probably get
So
to.
VOC,
Volatile organic compound.
outgases.
Yeah, and we'll get into that later on. I'm
Right, so make
sure.
sure people know.
There's
And you guys talk about these acronyms. Everybody's got people out there don't know necessarily VOCs.
So in the future, something that could be interesting is I pay attention to a lot of builders outside of this area in different parts of the country and what they're doing, and it's just like fashion trends are set elsewhere, and we eventually adopt it. And what they're really starting to do now is pay attention to their carbon footprint.
Yes.
And I do see this eventually making its way into the code, because that's where society is moving. It's an environmental impact. We're becoming more aware of what it can do. And concrete is one of the biggest environmental impacts we have as far as the carbon footprint. And they're going to base this off of a point system.
Yes.
In fact, there's several home ratings that already have them. It's not just net zero anymore. It's carbon zero rated homes that they've factored in the amount of carbon that's being used. They get a certain amount of points for it, and that's how it's rated. Much like
And it's also a resale.
Yeah, and
It's a
that's
resale for sure. You have a rating on your house, and you go to buy the house next door or your house. The one house is worth more or less because of the rating.
correct.
So it is a whole thing.
And that's why there's so much work being done right now to recycle old concrete, is to reduce part of that.
the carbon footprint.
Yep. And there's
Guaranteed,
about
baby,
3
guaranteed.
companies right now in the
Yes,
U.S.
this
that
is turning into like,
Another advantage.
these are all
of
reasons
Airbnb.
you should not do a
Airbnb.
slab on
are,
grade.
yeah, exactly.
There's a lot of them.
But we're here.
We're here.
We still
Right.
live here.
Yeah,
We're-
we're doing it.
We've got builds going on right now that are that way.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not going to not build that house and say it's a bad house.
No.
It's still a good house. It's just a different foundation. And there are different ways of doing it that just aren't talked about. And that's what we're here to do, is talk about those.
something different. Yeah.
So, well, anything else about the foundations?
I see.
Rebar.
Yeah, between the rebar, but also we probably ought to hit on that raised brick ledge a little bit.
Oh yeah.
I really,
Before we get there,
Yeah.
one other thing is hold downs.
I
Yeah.
wanted to talk about the rebar, and I wanted to talk about something that was brought up when you and I were talking to this gentleman that came out a month ago, the inspection for the culvert, right? And he was talking about something. He was doing a big project. He was an inspector, and he's like, "The rebar is out, man. We're going with the fiber
mesh.
fiber mesh." So we should
Fiberglass
we should
rebar.
talk about that, or fiberglass rebar. you know, versus people just thinking that standard rebar. And so there's other things to do.
Or fiber reinforced concrete.
Yeah, that's what he was talking about, the fiber reinforced, and he said that's just the only way to go. He was talking flat work, though. I don't know about.
I know in some parts of the country they do fiber reinforced concrete for slabs as well as footings. So that's not uncommon. It's uncommon here.
We're not going to see that because no one would approve it.
And you
On
have
the
suppliers.
flat work, they would approve it, but on the foundation, they wouldn't.
It starts to become a supplier issue because you're not going to ship concrete 3 hours away.
No.
Yeah, but say here locally, they were pouring it.
Yeah, they will do.
Yeah,
They will do sidewalks. I've seen driveways poured with it. But again, if the finishers don't have their act together a little bit, you get the little fuzzies.
Right.
And then people go, I don't want that in my concrete. Well, after about a couple of months, it's gone anyway. It's just due with traffic. So I think it's a good idea, and I think it's a better reinforcement. I am still not that 8x8 or 10x10 mesh wire.
No.
I think that needs to go away. I really do.
Well, I guess on the heels of that, we should talk about rebar placement.
Yeah.
What I mean by placement isn't necessarily, well, I guess we can talk about rebar schedule. You know, number 4 bar at 6 inches on center, what that really means on centers. But I was talking more placement within the slab with the little feet.
Yeah.
Or, I mean, we call them dobies, those little
Yeah, chairs is what.
chairs. We call them chairs, but that's really important when you're out there looking at what your job you're getting. If the rebar is all sitting on the bottom of the sand, what was it there? It's not doing anybody any good.
Right.
It's got to be right in the middle of the slab. So placement is really, really important on the rebar.
Yeah, and
And the schedule is super important. You know,
yeah, I kind of like, you know, for the most part, most of the guys are pretty good about putting at least a 2-inch chair in a 5-inch slab. So they get you up in the upper third anyway. And that is very much acceptable practice.
but keep an eye on that.
And there's a lot of different styles of chairs.
Yes.
And those vary throughout the Amarillo. I mean, I've
Yeah,
seen
yeah.
It's
multiple
very throughout the
styles.
whole country. I mean,
Same in the footings, keeping that rebar off the bottom of the footings, same thing. Keeping it off the sidewall, same thing.
And that brings up the fact that we still use a ton of steel rebar here. And I understand that the cost of fiberglass rebar is starting to come down a little bit. And if steel keeps going up and the fiberglass continues to be being used, I've asked a couple of the guys to at least try it.
Yeah, start buying more so it'll go down.
So yeah, well, it's just not that, but just for the fact that one man can pick up a bundle of number 4 fiberglass and he can walk to the job site with it.
right.
It's no big deal. And it doesn't have the heat build up. And if you talk to the concrete guys this last 2 weeks,
I love it.
with 103 to 104 degree weather,
Right, you can't touch the rebar.
their hands are red. I mean, some of them taking their gloves off and they're beet red. They're just burned.
It's steel sitting in the
The
sun.
only drawback I've heard from it is you can't bend it. You got
No.
to pre-bend.
You got to buy a pre-bend.
Which, ironically, a lot of the steel guys are still buying pre-bent.
Right.
Yeah.
I was going to say they're buying them.
Buying a prevent anyway, so
Yeah.
who cares?
Right.
That's the only drawback I've heard. Cost and not being able to bend it.
But I think the cost is getting.
It's not.
It's not probably like it was 2 or 3 years ago where it was 20-30% more.
Yeah.
It's not there.
I hadn't priced it for a few years. The first time I saw it, I looked at it and thought, that's cool. I'd like to try it.
But it's too much money.
I'm not going to spend the money for no added benefit other than the ease of installation.
Right.
But I think we're on the cusp of it.
Yeah, I do too.
But the back to the placement, you know, we talked about shovel beams, and obviously because they use them with a shovel. But the word beam is really important there, and so you're basically making a beam. So everybody understands what a beam is and what it does. It's a heavy thing, you know, it's giving you structure. That's what's happening in the slab. Is we're trying to add structure to this concrete because concrete isn't anything by itself. And so if you're designing concrete around rebar to be in a certain spot for a certain reason, it's super important. So that's what placement of the bar, you know, if it's laying on the dirt or if it's too close to not in the center or the top third, you're wasting your time. So you have to pay attention and really pay attention right before they pour to where your bar is.
Mhm.
That's just super important.
I would agree.
And having enough chairs under the rebar in the slab. ACI says at least 8 to 10 chairs per 100 square feet. That comes right out of ACI. Because I had to look it up
So
because I didn't know.
110 square feet.
That doesn't even seem like enough.
8 to 10 chairs per 100 square feet. So that could be one chair per.
Every couple of feet.
But that's more than what most of them put in now. Most of them don't do that.
Really, just walking
Mhm.
through and pulling up the.
No, they're not walking through. If they're using wire in a sidewalk or a driveway, they'll pull up the 8x8 or 10x10.
You know what the wire's good for? When you break the concrete up, it holds the clumps together.
Yeah, it holds the clumps together,
That's what that is.
Yeah. But anyway, I don't know. I would like to see somebody at least try some of the fiberglass because it doesn't change. The nice thing about the fiberglass, it never rusts. Never rusts.
So if I went down to the supply store right now, I'd be able to buy a chunk of fiberglass number 4 bar. They have it in stock.
There's probably some locations you could.
Yeah, there's probably somebody here that can get, well, without naming, one of our bigger suppliers, I think, stocks it in Lubbock.
So back to I got another random fact here. We were talking about concrete. We were talking about vapor slabs. Interesting fact: concrete will wick moisture, will wick water up. Does any of you guys have a guess? I've told you. You've talked about it. You have a guess how far water will wick up concrete? 16 miles.
Well, I was way off.
16 miles. So the size, like the skyscrapers that are concrete that they build, they have moisture blocks, moisture stops they put in between their big concrete pillars and their concrete beams to stop that. But it's a scientific fact. So if you're thinking about not putting a vapor barrier under that slab, and we do get rain and people water their yards here, and we're putting wood straight on top of that foundation, the likelihood that it could migrate moisture is pretty high. I mean,
Really high.
why don't we do treated sill plates?
Right.
But it's something to think about. It's interesting.
That's a fun fact.
Mhm. Anyways, sidetracked you, but
No, but it's, but I don't think very many people know that.
Yeah.
I don't.
it's more than wood. That's why we have like a tree limit height because wood's in the hundreds of feet. 16 miles for concrete.
That's crazy.
Anything else on foundation before we wrap up?
We wanted to talk about the brick ledge.
Let's talk about the brick ledge.
I think the brick ledge is important.
The brick ledge.
it's
A lot of brick houses in this town. You
a
know,
lot of masonry.
a lot of masonry, and a lot of masonry in the dirt.
Yeah, there's a lot of it.
A lot of masonry is in the dirt. When you go home to your personal house, walk outside, and if your yard is dying into the dirt, that means that they ran the masonry down to the footing. It needs support. It needs to be ran to a footing, and then they backfill dirt against your brick.
Yeah, and we'll get more on that when we start talking about wall, but let's talk about the footing in specific. So you're keeping that brick out of the dirt, and I think we'll get into all the bricklaying details later
Oh,
on.
for sure, and tons of those.
Yeah.
But explain what that brick ledge is doing.
Well, it just raises the brick up the dirt. So you have a concrete mini footing, if you will,
Mhm.
and that's where you're.
Attached to the same footing. It's
Oh,
all
it's
one.
completely all attached. It's all poured in place, but it just brings the brick out of the dirt, and so it gives the brick a legitimate place to live.
Mhm.
And I think once you do a final grade around that house, even if you look at the PRFM drawings, it doesn't show dirt on brick. It shows, if you look real close, it shows it at the edge of the footing, not on
But it
top.
doesn't show a
You're
brick
exactly
ledge, though.
right. It does.
No, it does not.
It doesn't show a brick ledge.
Nope.
It does show the dirt. So it's almost like a cartoon drawing. 'Cause it's not really true.
Yeah.
You know?
Imagine that.
Imagine that.
They've got it designed like an elevated stem wall almost.
Right.
Yeah. Which it's clearly not.
And it was not a money thing. It doesn't cost any extra to do it. It's an intentional item. You just have to pay attention and want it, you know.
That increases the longevity of that masonry work.
Oh, absolutely.
So I guess when we're talking about that, you don't do a brick ledge with stucco. So your stucco's in the dirt.
Nope. You got to be 2 inches.
It's called for. It's got to be above grade.
Yep.
Okay. So if you were going to do a house half stucco and half brick, what would you do? Would you do a brick ledge all the way around and put the stucco on the brick ledge? Seems like a lot of these houses are coming out a little more style. The custom ones aren't just
Well,
4 walls and brick.
it's assembled differently, right? Your stucco does not have to have that foundational layer.
No,
It's
the drive.
attached to the wall.
sheeting.
So they're stopping it short of that footing.
Mhm.
Whereas the brick has to start on the
Has to
footing.
actually have support.
You got to have flashing between the stucco and the brick, and we don't see a whole lot of that.
We see a lot of poorly installed stucco.
Oh, absolutely.
And that can be an absolute nightmare if it's
Yep.
not done quickly. In fact, you can completely destroy a house in a couple months' time, even in our arid climate here.
Yeah.
But we'll definitely get to that when we get to the wall assembly portion of this. I think we've got a lot to talk about.
I think we do too.
It might be a 3 series podcast
Yeah,
on that.
it might be.
So
Well, I think the last thing left really is just making sure that you have a 2% grade away from that house. And as far as I'm concerned, boy, don't put your flower beds next to your foundation. I think that's a mistake.
So flower beds and watering flower beds. So people talk to me and they say that the reason the dirt moves is because it dries up and then it gets wet and it dries up and it moves and expands. Other people have said just don't turn your sprinklers off, water year round.
So
what's your thoughts on
you,
that? With the dirt?
I agree with having moisture in the ground at all times. Doesn't mean that you turn your sprinklers on in the summertime, it waters 4 times a week at 20 minutes a station, that it needs to stay that way year round.
No.
But I do agree that you need to have your
Some
sprinklers
people
come
say
on.
soaker hoses.
Well, the sprinklers probably need to come on throughout the winter, whether your grass needs it or not. Your dirt does. So
Right.
what happens is that dirt contracts when it gets dry away from the house. Loose dirt fills in that crack. Then moisture comes in, and now you've got more dirt that was there before, and it starts pushing against that foundation.
Right.
And I know that through several of my friends that live around the Fort Worth area, they run soaker hoses around their houses just to maintain some kind of consistency. I mean, I've seen cracks this wide over doorways and windows created from, so they have a little bit more movement
From the compression.
Yep, from the compression. So, I mean, they have a little more movement probably down there than we do, but they get more rain than we do. And then all of a sudden it'll dry out for 30 days and they don't get any. That's,
Right.
I mean,
So keeping the dirt moist is a good thing.
It's almost that
they're the opposite.
our extensive rain, which can be 30 to 60 days, and we're running a sprinkler system consistently, is
Right.
actually a benefit for us because it's a consistent moisture content.
Right.
Consistency is the name of the game.
If we had enough rain where grass would stay green and we got to turn sprinklers off more often, it would probably be more of an issue, actually.
Yeah.
So what do you think about that? Since we're kind of it's on the foundation, it's not really foundation, but I see a lot of guys run this 2-foot catwalk all around the house after the house is completely done. Does that help or hurt the foundation?
What my opinion is, it's going to help keep sprinklers off that house.
Yeah. We'll do that.
And then that's something that we'll get into again on the wall assembly of what we think that can do to the house and ways to mitigate it.
Because not like you don't see a lot of gutters, so it's like a splash kind of thing. The 2 foot worth of concrete at $4 or $5 a foot isn't a giveaway. What's cheaper, that or gutters? And is there a benefit to that chunk of concrete going around?
I will tell you, my wife said she liked the sidewalk so she could walk all the way around the house, and she had a place to put flower pots and things like that.
keeps flower beds from being put up against the house.
Is there
Yes,
any,
it does.
but as far as benefits to the foundation itself, the ground foundations today, any benefits to the foundation to do that? Because they actually do tie that into the foundation. They drill and they, set the bar into the foundation, whether they epoxy it or not, depending on the guy. But you got this little,
I don't know if it's
it's a
a
float.
total
Float around
benefit
there.
to the foundation, except you just don't have your flower beds up against the house. That's
And it
that to
keeps
me.
flower beds and sprinklers with water control for irrigation purposes would be the
Absolutely,
only thing I could think of, other than the aesthetics and the ability to walk around the house.
Well, it'd provide a buffer basically to where your average moisture content right up next to the slab, because you got 2 feet. And I'm not a builder. I think everybody knows that. But
Why are you here?
I'm asking myself the same question.
We're happy to have you.
But would that be a potential benefit of doing that kind of work?
Well, you immediately brought something else to my mind. Is how many houses do you see that have a negative grade after so many years of being built right beside the house?
Mhm.
That concrete would prevent that. It might have a negative grade next to that sidewalk, but it's not directly up against your foundation.
Right.
And that sidewalk is usually a 1.5 or 2% grade anyway.
Sure.
So you're running
So
off
you're
what
picking
falls
your
off.
grade off right from the beginning,
Yep,
which is your 6-foot grade you normally have to have. So at least you're picking up something
something of it.
that's never going to go away.
No,
But then what you were saying is that the moisture, I think I heard what your question was, right? Isn't that killing the moisture that we want to keep close to the slab?
Well, it would just be a buffer where you don't have extreme high moisture content or extreme low moisture content, because you're
2 feet
effectively
away.
I would agree.
So there's a benefit.
so
to
there
the-
would be benefit.
So the ground wouldn't be as wigged out because it's out there wigging out, not necessarily affecting the foundation because we got this 2-foot buffer. And Robert's wife gets to walk around there, just
Yeah,
added benefit.
added benefit.
taking the garbage out.
Yeah.
I think she
So,
takes the garbage
And
out.
No,
no,
she didn't.
if you like the look of the concrete, put the concrete.
Yeah.
There's not a reason not to.
Okay, so that was kind of the last little foundation thing I was thinking of.
The only other thing I thought of, I mentioned a minute ago, was the hold downs. We're not really seeing that around here. Down south, we've got to embed, like your garage door openings have to be embedded in the concrete, pulled up into your framing and strapped in. It might be something that comes.
The only thing that we get into here is on your portal frames. Now, we don't rock and roll, and we don't, our wind is not like it can be up around Denver, around the western slopes and things, but you still have to have a minimum of two bolts,
Mhm.
2 anchor bolts with at least 2 2x2 square washers and a hold down strap from the top of the top plate down past the beam, at least 6 inches. I'm still seeing that not being done. all the time.
We'll talk about that in the framing section.
Yeah.
I'm thinking you'll talk about the hold downs in the framing sections.
But that
It's a-
particular hold down that I was talking about is actually embed into the concrete.
It's an HTT, Simpson staff.
Simpson,
Yeah.
Exactly right.
ST24 staff.
Mhm.
And that's kind of more of a lateral shear kind of part of the framing. It's part of the wall
Uplift.
framing. It's for brace panels. It's for shear panels. A wall of windows. You have a full wall of windows. You only have so many panels in between.
Mhm.
I added about 25 or 26
Oh,
of
yeah,
those
you did.
to that project down there. With the making my own brace panels in between these window sections. And you're right, those would have to go. Interesting enough, they go in the stem wall because the stem wall is 2 feet, 2 feet tall. But in the case of a pier and beam, in the case of a slab on grade, you have to dig a fence post hole. You got to go down and dig a hole and then drop that stab in there. And how it ties into anything else with the bar that would be in a stem wall, I'm not sure how it ties in. It's its own little hole.
Well, I mean,
You
it
have to
called
do for a pull.
at least a 1/2 inch by 7.5 inch anchor bolt. But actually, when you start counting it, 7.5 inches is what's supposed to be in the concrete.
You're way
So
below
you're-
concrete.
Yeah. So
So it's not.
so that anchor bolt is supposed to be tied into that rebar somewhere if you're using a hook type
Mhm.
anchor bolt. but that anchor bolt's going to be probably 12 inches long.
Which is long past the concrete on the slab on grade. So what?
It's just the footing.
Yeah, it's going into the footing is where it's headed into.
And
So
so,
it's put way early on before the slab.
Right.
so it has to be in there. So when you're checking your footing, you need to see a 1/2 inch, bolt sticking out that far,
Should be
or threaded rod.
threaded rod.
Threaded rod would work. And so the only thing we're going to see here is portal.
Right.
We're going to see 4 holes, four stabs. That's it. But we can talk about a lot of those other things when we get into the wall systems. But there's a lot of really cool. But most of that stuff is seismic,
Right.
and we're not in the seismic.
No.
They're not in the seismic zone here, so you're not going to see a lot of that.
That's true. Well, I think that kind of wraps up this podcast on the foundation. And I had fun talking about it and
Oh, for sure.
discussing some things that maybe we'll start to see in the future here. Some possibilities to consider and maybe make you question what you're doing and why you do it and what could be better. I think if we all kind of have that mindset, everything progresses, everything gets better, and buildings last longer and things work better. So,
But thanking our sponsors yet?
well, that's what I was actually going to get to that. Next podcast coming up is going to be, if I'm going to, we'll start talking about framing. And I know we've got a lot to say about framing, and there's a lot of different ways to frame, a lot of different styles, a lot of different materials. So it might be a pretty big conversation. We do have some opportunities for a sponsor. If you'd like to sponsor the show, help us out. I think you can get in touch with anybody. Obviously, it's been on this podcast or as part of the education committee or in the Builder Association.
We take checks, cash,
Venmo.
Bitcoin,
Credit card.
Bitcoin.
Food.
Definitely
We take
Food.
Yeah, we'll talk for food.
we could even look at doing the podcast at a different location as part of a sponsor, and we can put. We've got opportunities to put banners on, display. We've got a lot of opportunity for sponsorships, and we are right now typically low budget for what we're doing, but we'd like to continue to improve this and make it more
Absolutely.
interesting. And I think a lot of good things can come from this. So any help and sponsorship would be great. Donations also. I'm not going to turn those down.
Nope.
It all is going to benefit the Builder Association. But for
TPBA it's our sponsor right now.
that is it. That's it.
And don't forget, if you build it and it's broken, we're not responsible.
That's right.
That's our disclaimer.
That's our disclaimer. Yeah.
Yes, it's not our fault if you did something got you in trouble. So, anyways, we'll be back with the next podcast talking about wall framing. Please like, subscribe, tell people about it. Get some listeners, some watchers on here. I think we're now officially on all the platforms, including YouTube, Apple, Spotify.
Yeah.
If you've got questions, we don't have a podcast email set up. Maybe with the sponsorship, we can get that taken care of. But you think you guys all have contact to us, and we'd love to hear from you, get some feedback. We'd also love to have you on as a guest for the show. So you guys continue to watch, and we'll have more coming in the future.
We definitely want to encourage everybody to come down for that free lunch you're buying.
That's right. When is that? The next Builder Association luncheon, and you guys will
Be in September.
be in September.
And Jordan's buying lunch. So if you guys want to come down and see us in person,
right.
we'll be there.
That's right.
Sign autographs.
That's right. Don't feel starstruck.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Until next time. Thanks for watching the TPBA
Thanks for
Builder
watching.
Talk.
Thank you.
Thanks.